Hi, Briana. Welcome to the Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me on. Super excited.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you here. Before we kind of get started on particulars, I would love for you to share with our listeners kind of right off from the start, kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis with your career.
Yeah, awesome. So again, thanks for having me on. I was super excited to do this and be a part of this opportunity. And I think this whole entire podcast and really kind of motivating and giving more information to others is really a beautiful thing. And I think, a lot of basically everything you guys do is awesome. So my title is Holistic Health and Nutrition Specialist. I am an integrative health practitioner as well, obviously certified through Dr. Cabral's IHP course. I did this course. I was the first graduating class, so I jumped right in. And on a day-to-day basis, what I do for my clients is I really focus solely on nutrition, but obviously from a holistic perspective, and include all of the integrative testing and all of those different modalities to help people find the root cause, which is basically the point of the entire course itself of IHP. Where I set myself apart a little bit differently is our entire course is based off of like killing the diet and killing the diet culture from the perspective of not having people cyclical yo-yo dieting and stuff like that, because that causes what we have found. And as you know, a lot of issues down the road with health, with hormones, gut issues, all those different things. So this nutrition-based program is what I do. And we actually focus on a 4-phase system that helps people go from essentially, chronically dieting to never dieting again. So it's super rewarding. And I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more about that a little bit later.
Yeah, that sounds so wonderful and so important for women specifically, right? Where constantly the saturation of this information especially now with like Instagram, even it's just so overwhelming. And women are like, well, this worked for this friend, or I'm going to go here and let me try this. And it almost becomes this like obsession with just trying the next best thing. And it can be so frustrating and so less rewarding than just listening to your own body. So that's wonderful. Can't wait to get into that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things that you just brought up that's really cool too is you brought up like social media and Instagram and, all of the things that are booming right now. And one of the biggest thing I see is like, I'm starting to see more and more is kind of like that anti-diet culture, right? And I think that a lot of us, a lot of the people who are like talking about intuitive eating, it's like this, kind of mysterious concept and all those different things. But anti-diet is a lot different than what I'm about. I'm more about like pro-health, which I think we're all about. And the anti-diet culture in some ways, it shapes and forms, have really created like this, eat whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter the quality of the food. It doesn't matter the quantity of the food. And I think the pro-health is completely different than that. It's really about kind of killing the cyclical, like I said, cyclical culture of essentially jumping in and out of juice cleanses and, all these different types of, skinny teas and, the laxatives and all those things that kind of social media pushes on us as being kind of a quick fix, which really that's all it is. It's a quick fix to get the scale to move. And I think one of the biggest things is that anti-diet, great. We don't want to diet. We don't want to track our food. We don't want to do all these things. But the biggest thing for me is that we need to focus on the quality of our food, right? So what's really going to basically saturate and help our internal health from a nutritional standpoint, minerals, vitamins, all those different things. So that's truly what's important to me. And as you can see, I get really excited about it.
That's good though. That's the passion behind it is what drives the success that you have with your clients, in my opinion. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how you got started on kind of this career path or journey, if you will.
Yeah. So my journey has been a long one, but I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible. But you have been a big part of my journey as well, obviously as Dr. Cabral. And I originally started on this path. So I've been doing nutrition coaching for the past 6 years. So I've been in this industry for a while. I actually started out where most people start out when they first get into nutrition, which is through like bodybuilding, right? So I started out doing bikini competitions and very restrictive dieting. And then after a year that I came to find that, that wasn't sustainable, right? So I kind of started to veer my path in a different direction, especially with my clients, because after about a year and a half of doing bodybuilding shows and, essentially in that industry, I realized that, yeah, it looked great. I looked great aesthetically. A lot of the people in that industry looked great aesthetically, but a lot of them had really bad internal health problems. And as Dr. Cabral has mentioned on some of his podcasts as well, a lot of those people are also taking a lot of, essentially anabolics and, steroidal inducing or muscle inducing drugs that essentially lead to a lot of problems, internally over time. And I didn't really want to be part of that, kind of circle anymore. Like, it was nothing against, the industry in general. It was not the path that I felt comfortable going down anymore, because once I became immersed in it, I started to kind of see the veil lift from what I thought was actually true. Right. So during that time that I was bodybuilding, I got breast implants, and it was, solely because I felt like it was going to make my body look more proportional, and obviously lots of other different reasons as well. From a confidence perspective, there's a lot of reasons why women get their breasts done. But I got implants put in 2015. And I ended up going to nationals, and, I didn't do very well at nationals, but I did get to the national level. I mainly didn't do very well, probably because I was natural and, and then, wasn't taking anything. So it was one of those things where I just couldn't compete on that level, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the reality of it. So what ended up happening is actually it was a year after I stopped competing, and it had been like a year and a half since I got breast implants. I started to get very, very sick. And when I'm talking about very, very sick, I'm talking about, I know that one of the reasons was because I was competing in restrictive dieting and all those different things, doing a lot of cardio, doing all the things that are just, now we know, that are just not really conducive to an overall stable and healthy and homeostatic internal environment. And what ended up happening is after I stopped competing, I was like, oh, I don't really feel that great, but I bet I'll be fine once I like reverse diet, which is like build my calories back up and, start to include more nutritious or nutritionally dense foods, as well as including like adaptogens and stuff for my adrenals, all those things. So what I started to realize, though, is as the years continued to go on, so it's probably about from 2016 to 2018, I started to get more sick and more sick and more sick. And it ended up happening that I finally realized that it was my breast implants that were contributing to all of my ailments that I was having, my symptoms. So, and I'll name some of the symptoms right now. I can't name them all. We might be here for an hour and a half. But it was, I can laugh about it now because honestly, I think it was a blessing in disguise, because I never would have gotten into starting to research integrative health and really understand how the body worked from a hormonal perspective if it wasn't for the fact that I needed it so bad. And I, during that 2-year period from about 2016 to 2018, I embarked on this journey of trying to figure out why my thyroid stopped working. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. Then I also was told multiple times that I was basically infertile, not going to be able to have children ever, essentially. And that was through basically just some lab work that I had done with about 8 different doctors at the time, conventional medicine doctors, which they told me multiple times, like, you're 20, I was 25 at the time, 25. I had hormone levels of a postmenopausal woman, which is obviously was not a very, not conducive to, my age at the time. It was very crazy. I was diagnosed also with chronic fatigue syndrome. So I had very, very low progesterone and estrogen from the hormone perspective, and then also very, very low cortisol levels. And I had seen, like I said, a total of 10 doctors. 8 of them were just conventional medicine doctors. And then 2 of them, one of them was a naturopathic doctor and one of them was a Chinese medicine doctor. And no matter what I did, and no matter the doctor that I went to, everyone kept throwing medications at me. And that just really kind of upset me, because I was basically told, especially with thyroid medication, that I would probably, once I started it, I would never be able to come off of it again. And I came from a place, obviously knowing nutrition and knowing all the things that I thought I knew about the body, that I didn't want to take that for my final answer, because of the fact that I knew that your body could evolve and change, and, and your genetics and all these different things were contributing factors to how you essentially could live a life happy and healthy and in vitality. And it was just very upsetting for me. So I just stopped going to all the doctors. And then from there, what I ended up doing is I started to dive into a bunch of research. And for about a period of 2 years, I just did a lot of studying. I tried like essential oils, like all things natural, because obviously the conventional method wasn't working for me. I was trying so hard to make it work, but I just didn't want to be on all these different medications. I mean, the side effects of being on hormones, especially when you're 24 years old, I didn't know anything about like what that was going to do long-term to my body. But I knew at the time that I just still wasn't feeling like myself. So I just stopped everything. And like I said, went down kind of a rabbit hole of research. And then that is when I actually found Dr. Cabral's podcast. It was, I believe, now it would have been in 2019. And I think the first class of IHPs might have been late 2019 or early 2020.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So as soon as I found his podcast, started listening, started understanding, this guy knows his stuff, man. Because every single thing, I was a very hard person to crack, from the perspective of I had been through so much and I was so frustrated that I had to like re-research everything that I ever heard, because I was just literally like, well, yeah, this person's saying this, but let's see what I find. And he was very obviously well-spoken and was able to really help me from the perspective of having kind of more hope in that direction of, integrative health and holistic medicine, and, all things natural. So I jumped in as soon as he said that he was going to open up a course. I jumped in feet first, because I was literally like, anything to make me feel better. So by that point, I had like self-diagnosed myself with candida, bacterial overgrowth, because those were a lot of my other symptoms as well. I had a lot of gut-based symptoms, a lot of really bad acne, which I remember sending you some photos at first, which we'll get into in a second, when we first actually met. But after I did the course, and I had finished level 1, I was like, okay, I want to start getting these tests done, but I don't want to wait until I finish level 2. So I was like, put me with one of Dr. Cabral's health coaches, because I know that they know their stuff. So then that's how essentially you and I met. And you were the first one to read my tests, to essentially kind of go through everything with you and with me. And it was really a kind of pivotal moment for me, because of the fact that you explained things very well. And it was almost like, I need to learn to explain things to people like this, because this is making sense, right? And I think that that's the whole purpose of, the teachings for analyzing these tests, is because I'm not knocking the conventional model completely. Heck, if someone chops off their arm, please go to the hospital. Don't try to do it holistically. But what I'm trying to say is there's always a means to essentially achieving a goal, especially when it comes to your health. There's multiple different means. And the education is what is lacking a lot of the time, from educating the client client or the patient in analyzing tests, right? We get our tests run in the conventional model, and then what happens? We get an email, and sometimes the doctor goes over them with us, sometimes they don't, and they just shoot us an email and say, hey, everything's in range. And I think that is the big kind of gap that there is between holistic medicine and then the conventional model. So I know that was kind of long-winded, but
no, it's such a common story in our industry of, I was kind of left with no answers, right? I mean, who says it better than Dr. Cabral when he, vowed that if that one particular doctor had kind of given him answers, he vowed that he was going to share that with the world, which he did, and then he shared it with other people who were just as kind of sick or in despair, not getting answers with conventional medicine. And they now, and it's the ripple effect, right? That we absolutely live for, to know that, you were a client and then you went on to IHP and now you're helping people understand it and giving the hope that somebody else gave you is like, that's just why we do what we do, right? It's honestly,
100%.
The best part of the whole thing. And so I'm curious if you had any obstacles in the process, of kind of going through, whether it's your own journey with health and kind of getting better, or even then once you kind of started in with starting your business, anything in that aspect?
Yeah. So I think this is a great question because I like reflecting back in my head right now, it's one of those things where I think that I came into it, I won't say with a level of confidence per se, but I felt like been through like the worst of the worst, where I was like, wow, I've experienced some of the things where that many people don't, they don't experience until they get older, right? Because their toxic load is, so much more prevalent when they, as they essentially age versus, in your mid 20s. I had kind of came in while saying like, I need to learn as much as I can. And with that, I think that there was not only the experience factor that kind of helped motivate me in that, okay, I'm starting to feel better. It was like an experiment on myself, right? Like I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to understand why I got sick. I'm starting to understand why my breast implants made me feel sick. And as soon as I got them out, I started to feel better. Like it was really a process of self-discovery that led me to a position where I was like, wow, this is probably as motivated as I've ever been to do something in my entire life, just because of the fact that I knew that not only was it helping me, but it could help others. And I knew there was tons of other people just like me. I would say that the biggest kind of factor of roadblock, so to speak, was kind of that self-doubt of not knowing if you're like good enough, right? If you're good enough to help people. And I think that a lot of us as practitioners, like we look up to a lot of like, Dr. Cabral and, you and the health coach team and all of those people. And we are in a position where, sometimes that self-doubt can creep in because we're like, am I good enough to be helping people? Like people's health, that's a big deal, right? And I think getting past that is kind of what I was touching on at the beginning when I was starting to answer this question, is that a lot of us have been through obviously the course itself, but it's the experience that helps us build that confidence level, right? So I think my biggest kind of testament or my biggest piece of advice for practitioners that are getting started is to just get started, right? Because the more people that you are starting to help, and the more that you have under your belt education wise, continue to go back into the coursework, continue to sharpen your tools. Like there's no way that we can know everything. So we have to continue to build on that knowledge base. And I think that that's the biggest thing, because the second that we let our ego or anyone's ego get in the way of essentially saying, oh, I know everything, then that's when you know that you're lost, because the body is ever changing. It's bio individual. You're going to have different scenarios with every single client. So you have to learn to pivot, to, do more research, all those different things. So that I would say that was probably the biggest kind of roadblock, but that's more of like a mental thing, and it's something that you can get over, right? You just have to continue to kind of push forward and continue to put yourself out there and let people know that you really do care about people, because a majority of the people that are starting, let's say almost all of the people that are starting a business as an integrative health practitioner, they truly just want to help people, and there's no downside in that, right? You have good intention, and I think that that's what's most important.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because you kind of identify with wondering if good enough, being good enough was your obstacle. But that's actually, in my opinion, potentially one of the biggest strengths, right? You were so wanting to help people that you actually questioned whether or not you were good enough to do so. And in my opinion, that's what makes a wonderful health practitioner in general. Any health coach, any coach in general, right, is just the passion to want to help. And having knowledge that in somebody else's hands could make a world of difference in their life. And so it can be something that holds you back, or it can be your greatest blessing if somebody does exactly what you did, which is break through that fear and do it anyway. Right. And that's a beautiful message.
I think that that's an amazing way to look at it, because I've honestly never looked at it that way before. I think that that's great. And like you said, a beautiful message to all the practitioners and, anyone that's getting started in this industry, really. I mean, even if you're not trying to, start to coach clients, it's a course essentially that is going to give you all the tools you need to help yourself and even your family members, right? Just by, giving the information or, relaying the information in a very understandable manner. Because I think that one of the biggest things that I really like a lot is if you can teach something, that is essentially how you will remember it best, because essentially you're able to teach others. And that has been my biggest driving factor, is being able to put things into a feasible way of understanding for people to teach them, so that essentially I can, remember it. And each time I teach it, I think I get something different out of that conversation, which is also a plus as well. It's like you're getting, it's a give and take. You're taking that additional knowledge and restoring it. And I really like that too.
Yep, of course. Yeah, you learn. And that's my other favorite part about this industry, right? The health coaching in general is there's always something to learn, even if it's learning, about things that you don't necessarily believe in, or a client comes to you and they have X, Y, and Z, and you've never heard of Z. Well, now you're researching that and you're trying to, piece things together. It's such an ever learning industry that it really has so much, never ending. That's a great part of it too. So.
Yep. I agree 100%.
Let's share with the listeners now kind of where you're at now. So what do? You shared a little bit with us at the beginning, but kind of what is your day-to-day? What's the general client base that you work with, and how is your practice structured, in general?
Yeah, for sure. So my entire practice is remote, so online. So I work with people all over the world. Our company is called Nourish. So it's spelled Nrish. So it's a play on nourish, like nourishing the body, which is really cool. The foundation, kind of the bread and butter of our entire program, is holistic nutrition. So we're teaching all of the things that were taught in the course, in Dr. Cabral's course, the IHP course. We're teaching all of those things, but through with a strong foundation of nutrition. Because as many people that went through the course, as they know, nutrition is kind of one of the first things that's introduced. And it's that way for a reason. It's because you cannot build a house on a broken foundation. And that's why nutrition is essentially one of the first things that is taught on, and one of the things that is constantly referenced throughout the entire course itself. And a lot of us can relate to that too, because we know that nutrition is the biggest thing when it comes to moving the needle in our health, right? It's what we do every single day. We do it 3-4 times a day. We consume food everyone on earth has to consume food to stay alive. Well, at least everyone I know. And it becomes one of those situations where it really gives a framework, right? So our 3 principles of our program, again, it's an intuitive eating program. So we're focusing on the nutrition education. So the 3 foundational principles are portion control, reducing inflammation, and toxicity, right? So it's kind of like this trifecta of a foundation. So we use macros as a form of portion control, but someone might stop me and be like, hey, that's a form of dieting. Yes, it is actually, it 100% is a form of dieting, but actually we use it as a tool and we wean people off of it in a period of 12 months. So it's actually really cool because we're using a kind of, I guess you could say, more of like a bodybuilding. It sounds bodybuilding to me because that's how I got introduced to macros, but we're using more of that style of kind of like, I guess you could say like a tracking or a dieting approach. And then we're essentially weaning people off of it as they go throughout our program. So our entire program is currently 12 months long. But we actually have an entry point that is just a one-time payment for a 30-day challenge. Now, when we first developed this, we were like, everyone's doing 30-day challenges. What sets us apart, right? And it was the fact that we were using holistic nutrition mechanisms and teachings inside the 30-day challenge to really get people to reduce inflammation and detoxify the body in a period of 30 days. So it's kind of like a trial period to see if you like our style of coaching, right? And then what we do is we enter you into a 4-phase program that helps you wean off of macros and understand your body's toxicity, understand inflammation and what those 2 things together do to the body and how those essentially kind of really stop any type of progress that we get and why we're essentially in the cyclical diet culture because we're toxic and inflamed, right? So it becomes really for the individual a process of self-discovery. And as we go through, it's phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, we give like intuitive science, we give an intuitive introduction, which is phase 1. And then phase 3 is intuitive reasoning. So we help people understand like intuition, give the science behind what that means and how that essentially happens in the body. And then phase 4, there's no skill at all. You're not supposed to weigh yourself. You're not supposed to track anything anymore. And you're also not supposed to measure your food. So it's a very unique model. And I think that that's why I really like it because there's nothing else in the industry like it. And the way that we essentially deliver information is all through like a private learning portal and all those different things. So, it's kind of like going to like a holistic nutrition kind of university, but for yourself specifically, right? So you find out your pain points, like you find out the things that you're struggling with, right? Is it, binge eating or eating too much sugar or, not eating enough, chronically under eating? I know that you have probably experienced a lot of people that just don't eat a lot. And it's one of the things that the diet culture teaches us as well, which is that, we don't need to eat, cut your calories. That's the first way to essentially lose weight, right? And what we're coming to find is that causes a lot of issues down the road through metabolic adaptation, which is essentially down rendering your metabolism and all those different things. So guys, we want the body to feel safe, right? So that is essentially how we get long lasting results. So
exactly. And the intuitive part too, because under eating and not feeding your physical needs for your body, right, has also this emotional connection. And our intuition, can come into play with, well, if we're not eating enough food and we're fasting too long or we're cutting our portions way down, what else are we, starving inside? And bringing mindfulness to that, I think, is so powerful. Again, especially when the industry is just so clouded with information of every diet you could possibly imagine, any calorie restriction you want to go in, any fasting window you want to adopt. There's science that says it works, right? And just because it works for a short term doesn't mean it's going to work forever. And I think that that's where something like this, where the beauty in this lies, is you kind of get off that roller coaster and you finally once and for all can kind of put down all the other noise and listen to your body and listen to what you need, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, physically, nutritionally.
Yeah.
It's just a overall encompassing way to take care of your health in many ways.
See, you get it. No, yeah. No, it's really amazing. And honestly, it's a breath of fresh air to know. And for all of us who have done this program and really understood, what exactly it takes. It's like these simple things, simple action steps, simple swaps when it comes to your health, like all those things, like, it really just goes to show that we just need to really just educate on those things, because they are so simple. And over time, what they lead to is that, life of health and longevity, which is what essentially should be everyone's goal, right? Yeah, we want to look good, which that's essentially a byproduct of taking care of your internal health. Like, our external appearance is always a reflection of what's going on inside. And that's why our body gives us things like symptoms, right? When we have chronic, skin issues, acne, when we're bloated, think of that as an external representation of what is going on internally. And that is essentially what we should always be teaching, because like I said, we want to look good. We want to, look good in the bathing suit, but that is a short-term goal. And we want to switch that framing to being a long-term goal of overall health. And then the physical results will come from that. So that's one of the reasons why we like market our program the way that we do, and saying like, oh yeah, it's about intuitive eating. It's kind of hard sometimes for people to understand what that even means. And it's kind of, like I said, this mysterious kind of, this mysterious phrase, but it really just comes down to coming back to nature, the way that your body was supposed to be previously. So
yeah, it sounds great. If you had to kind of give an overall message to, any health coach, starting out, what would be, the number one thing you would want other coaches who are kind of in the position of thinking like, I want to start this, or I think this is something I want to do? What would be kind of your one piece of advice?
My one piece of advice is going to be very simple, and it's going to be just do it. Because honestly, if you think about a lot of the times the goals that we have and I'm a victim of this too, or I'm guilty of this too, which is just kind of procrastinating when I know that I want to do something, or I have a feeling that I need to do something. And like I said, it kind of ties back into that kind of self-doubt, or like, maybe I'm not ready, or whatever it may be. But at the same time, it's like, there's no reason why you shouldn't start now, because the experience, like I had stated before, is how you're going to become more and more and more confident, and also more and more versed, and help more and more people. And I think that that's all of our missions, even if you haven't done any type of a course on holistic health or integrative health. Our purpose here on this earth is to give value to others. And I think that is the core of this entire, like, what you guys are doing, is we are giving back that value and helping expand health to the entire world. And I think that everyone deserves to be healthy, and everyone, deserves to be able to have access to the education to bring themselves in the right direction. So anyways, long story short, it's that, just start. And it's the most rewarding thing that you could possibly do. It really is. Every single time I get off my coaching calls, or I get off a lab consultation call, or anything like that, it's always just like that feeling of like, you can't get another feeling like that from anywhere else. It's, especially when someone tells you, yeah, like my symptoms are gone, my bloating's gone, and, I'm not having to quickly run to the bathroom anymore. It was disrupting my life. My skin looks better. I look glowy. I'm getting so many different compliments. Like, I'm getting chills right now, because there's literally nothing that's better. And yeah. I'll just end it with that.
Yeah. Could not agree more. I mean, I'm a crier. There's times where I actually had a mom the other day who just profusely thanked me for giving her daughter back, by alleviating her symptoms. And being a mom myself, I mean, you can't help but get so emotional. And she kept saying, like, you are the reason. Like, you did that. This is because of you. And like hearing those words, which I'm sure you've heard so many times. And you made the point, and you said that, our job here is to, be of service, or I forget what the exact words that you use, but to give to others. And in giving to others, you give to yourself. Like that's what fills you up, is the knowledge and the feeling that you have helped somebody else with what you've been helped with. And there's just no more beautiful process than that, in my opinion. So
100% agree.
All right. If you had to, a little kind of fun question, if you had to, give another piece, so you've done IHP, maybe you've read The Rain Barrel Effect, Dr. Cabral's book, but is there any other books, any kind of other things that, any other, piece of educational material that you think is of great value?
So one of the books that I just recently read, I think it was last year, and it was the Mastering Diabetes Method. And it's a very controversial book about talking, I think we actually talked about this on one of our calls. It's talking about diabetes and the cause of diabetes. And I think diabetes, because it's so prevalent, right? And it's really honestly an epidemic that a lot of us as type 2 are coming to find, especially as practitioners, that we're dealing with a lot of clients who essentially have that as one of their, diseases or diseases of the body. I wanted to be more versed in how it's caused and how to essentially help guide people on how to treat it. And I cannot remember the name of the author, because of course, when you get put on the spot, you can't remember. But it's called the Mastering Diabetes Method. I cannot remember. There's 2 authors and they partnered on the book. If we have show notes, we can probably add it. I don't know if we're that advanced yet.
Yeah. No, we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Perfect. So you guys are always ahead. So this book kind of changed my perspective. It was backed by so many different scientific studies that I thought it was just fascinating. And it was really talking about how diabetes is essentially how it happens on a scientific level in the body, and also how it essentially can be exacerbated by the overconsumption of fat. So the exact opposite of what the mainstream kind of teaches. So I read that book and I just thought it's always different. It's always a good idea to get different perspectives, right? From different areas, even very, like you said, you already said this, but controversial perspectives. I love looking into stuff like that because I believe that there is a lot of, there can be truth in a lot of different things. It's just kind of the way that people spin it. So I thought that book was great. And another book that I'm reading is literally called Toxins. And again, we'll have to link it up, but it is talking about Lyme and how it affects the body. And that's another thing that I really like to kind of look into, because Lyme is a very obviously complicated thing that happens in the body. And I really wanted to just kind of understand it a little bit more, but that's not my area of specialty. So I like to kind of look into things like that. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It was so great having you on the show, Briana. This was so fun. I think the listeners are going to get a huge amount of information from it as far as inspiration. So thank you for that. Tell us where we can find you from a social media standpoint, whether you have social media accounts or anything that you want to share from the website as well.
Yeah. So you can find me on social on Instagram at Breezy Wellness, BREEZY.wellness. And then my website is nourish.com, NRISH.com. Super easy, short and simple. And then I'm on Facebook by just my name, Briana Owen. So you'll be able to find me there.
Great. Good.
I'm on Facebook all the time.
Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. And we can add that to the show notes. Honestly, thank you so much for coming on the Health Coach Success podcast. This was so much fun, and I wish you so much success in the future. You've overcome so much, and thanks for sharing it with the world.
Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And I'll see you guys again soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.